Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Premed Office Hours today. We're excited that you're here with us, and we're going to have a good hour of answering questions and whatever's on your mind. We want you to know that we're here to address your needs, your questions, your concerns, whatever. Carlos is playing with his background, you can tell. So we will introduce ourselves first, and I guess what we'll do is introduce our newest member first. This is, drum roll please, Carlos. What's up, my friend?
Hello. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
You're got your background the way you like it now, is it?
Yes, my computer did an update, so it changed a lot of things, and I'm like, oh, now I gotta go back and set it up again. So
Right. I hear you, but you're doing okay?
yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Good. And then, of course, the estimable and wonderful
I don't know about
Dina.
estimable, but I'll take wonderful. All right.
How are you, Dina?
I'm doing well. Yeah. A little stormy here in Florida.
Yeah.
A little stormy right now, but
Yeah. But you're not in the path of the
not in the path of
hurricane,
the
right?
tropical cyclone. So
yeah, good.
yeah.
Good. So we know you're safe. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And
okay.
very cool. And I am. Where's my thing? Oh, there it is. Here we are. I am Dr. Scott Wright, and I'm here to do all the things that are good for you guys. That's all I'll say about me. So. But I'm glad you're here, and so we are gonna hop right into answering some questions. Well, we don't have any yet, so I guess what we should do is here. Let's do this. Oh, you said my audio is a little faint.
It's going in. It's like a little faint. It's not 100% clear.
Okay, let me see if I can do. Does that help at all?
Yeah, I think it does. I don't know for you, Dina.
A little bit.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
What I'd like to know, I'm going to ask you guys a question.
Okay.
Since we are not having too many questions so everybody needs to ask questions. But Dina and Carlos, this time of year is tough for a lot of applicants because they are just waiting, and that's really difficult. And so I'm wondering, from y'all's perspective and from y'all's experience, what can they do to help alleviate the waiting stress? What do you recommend, Dina? What do you think?
Yeah. I mean, it's a really tough time because the waiting is probably the worst part of this process, because you have no control over it, right? And schools are trying to get through all of their applications. So what I definitely would not do is don't become obsessed with like SDN and Reddit and go down those big, deep, dark holes that can create more anxiety, like reading about other people getting interviews, etc. And the other thing is, I wouldn't be that impatient, because when you think about it, after you submit your secondary, you have to assume it's going to take like 30 days for your application to even be read, maybe more if it's the height of the season. So you think about like estimate a 4 to 6 weeks processing time. So it's like, just kind of hold your horses for a little bit and like let admissions actually have the time to read your application, put you in whatever bucket, that they want to put you in, like waiting for an interview slot or, whatever, and just kind of go with the flow. If schools will accept an update letter, and it's really important that you follow their policies, then I would say at the 3-month mark, so usually maybe like October, November 1st, you can craft update letters stating like any updates that you have to your application or your continued interest. But don't violate any policies. I've had a lot of students lately who have asked me, who said, I just interviewed yesterday or last week, and I want to send an update letter. And my answer is give them a chance to actually have you get to admissions committee. Like usually you're not going to admissions committee that day. So give admissions a chance to follow their own process. And then wait for a decision. And if you're waitlisted, maybe send a letter. But if you haven't heard anything, you just have to hang tight. You just have to hang tight.
Yeah.
Don't be annoying, though.
Yeah, that's right. Carlos, what do you think?
I think it's a waiting game at this point. I think if individuals are still working on secondaries for schools that they're receiving at this point, continue to work on those secondaries, get them in as soon as possible. If you have done all that and you're sort of just in this waiting game, take a step back. I think this is a moment to really reflect on the journey that you have been on. This is not an easy journey. It's been a long process to get here, and you have done everything you need to do up to this point. So just take a step back, enjoy a little bit of the, I would say, freedom of not having to type essays, create personal statements, do activities, all of that stuff. And then we always you like to tell applicants when we were working on the admission side that no news is good news. I think having not received an email that you've been removed from sort of consideration from admissions committee is an unfortunate outcome. But sitting and waiting for a response from them is actually good news. That means that they're still reviewing your application and you're not one of the ones that has received unfortunate news. So just continue to wait, reflect, and enjoy this peace and quiet time, I would say. Because if you are invited to interviews, multiple interviews, it's going to take a lot of energy to get through all of those interviews.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Good. Well, we've got some questions, so let's go for a question. Here we go. Anna, do all science courses need to show A's to be able to apply to med school at all? All A's in science courses. Dina, what do you think?
Well, it doesn't necessarily have to be all A's, but you do have to show mastery. You have to show that you understand the material in order to move on with the whole process. You want to be able to understand the content and be comfortable with science courses before you take the MCAT and before you try to tackle a very rigorous biomedical sciences curriculum. So as long as they're not C minuses, if it's C minus, then you have to take the class over because most schools won't accept that. And you want to try to do the best you can. Like if you have 1B, 2Bs, it's not the end of the world, but you want to try to do the best that you can.
Yeah, agree with that. That's good. Good. Okay. All right. Monica, what things would warrant an update letter if accepted? Yeah, if the school accepts an update letter, what would warrant sending one? So, I mean, this is a good question. I think I'm going to tackle this one, and I think it's mainly if you have an update. You don't want to send a letter saying, I am continuing to do X, I'm continuing to do Y, Z, etc. That's not an update. An update is if you started something new, if you got an award, or if you have some project that you started working in a new place, or there's something new has happened that you want to update the school. In other words, it's different from what you submitted in your primary and your secondary applications. So that would be, in my view, kind of what would warrant an update. It's simply recognizing the definition of the word update, and but you guys agree with that?
Yeah, I think an update letter is something meaningful that needs to be updated. If it's just I've completed my fall courses, I mean, it's expected that you're going to complete your degree, so I wouldn't consider that a big update. The question in the comment is indicates if accepted. I think I would check with the program. If you receive an offer of admission, um, I know my history when we would make offers of admission and applicants would come back and say, I've been accepted. Can I provide an update? We would say it's unnecessary. The committee's not going to go back and review your update at this point, especially if you've been accepted. So just check with the program if it's needed. I know that at the time of matriculation, if you're one of those lucky ones that is being admitted into a program, they'll receive updated transcripts and all of that stuff. So I would ask the program if that caveat is if you've been accepted and see if what it does for your application at this point, and if they really want the update now that you've received an offer of admission.
Okay.
Right.
Let's see. Here we go.
Oh, good. Ruschel.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Ruschel. Will the med school accept e-shadowing or in-person shadowing experiences? What do you think, Dina?
I think during the pandemic, e-shadowing was more widely acceptable and understandable, right? Because opportunities were limited with strict guidelines. I think now there's not that excuse. It is difficult to find shadowing. I will admit that. But I think med schools want to see that you know what medicine looks like in different environments. And I think that it's okay to have some e-shadowing, but it can't be your only shadowing. You need to couple that with some in-person shadowing. I don't know. How do you guys feel?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, telehealth is still a big thing. That's different, right, than just watching via Zoom, but you have to mix it up at this point. I know it's difficult to get in-person shadowing experiences, but you're gonna have to dig deep and look around. Deep.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and network, right? Start with your own physicians, right? Start with your own physicians and say, can you connect me with anyone who, would allow me to shadow? Go on the hospital websites, for hospitals in your area. Sometimes on the volunteer page, they might have information for like pre-health students and shadowing opportunities. You kind of have to hit the ground pavement. If you think about it, if you try to contact 25 people, all you need is one to say yes, right? So, all righty. Let's see. This is a good one.
Dawa. What does it sound like to be too rehearsed in interviews? Yeah, this is a great question. And Carlos, what do you think? I mean, we've all experienced these, applicants who write it all out and memorize it and then spit it out to you. And it just sounds like they memorized it and spit it out to you, right? So
yeah. No, I was letting you finish. I was agreeing with you. I think if you write it down and memorize it, that is exactly rehearse. I think if you write it down to start to develop your thoughts in your brain, and that way you can retain some of that information. So when you get asked certain questions, you're like, I can relate. I can go back into my memory file and pull the stories out. That's perfectly fine. I would say it also comes off a little rehearsed. And I don't know if you guys have experienced this, where the person's just talking in a very monotone, because I feel like it's this person's thinking and thinking back of what they actually remembered, what they typed out or what they wrote. So they're just talking to you, sort of, you could see that brain working back at the memory exactly word by word. So I would add fluctuation in the voice. And again, it is encouraged that you write your responses down if you are that type of person, that type of learner. But like your personal statement, when you get asked questions about yourself or your application, it's not so much verbatim to repeat what was in your application. It's for you to introduce yourself and humanize yourself. Of course, still talking about the topics that you included, but not verbatim. It's not meant for you to read directly from your personal statement. So just be mindful. Don't try to remember everything. Just remember the key things about whatever you've written down or what material you've used in your interview practice interviews.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, good. Yeah, Dina, have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I do a lot of mock interviews with students, and I can tell they're reading off of like they have it all, they've typed out their answer. And that's like a great process for a lot of students, is like writing out answers, and it helps them to like learn and memorize. But I can tell right away if somebody's reading, because like your eyes are like going in a different direction, and you can just tell. And often right at the end of, let's say if I'm asking, tell me about yourself, and they answer that, I'll immediately say, now try it without reading. And they'll be shocked.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll be like, what do you mean? Like, I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, that's something that you, especially if it's a virtual interview, you do not want to do. A great suggestion, it's kind of a happy medium, is take a good old Post-it note and bullet point out like the 3 most important things that you want to make sure that you convey in that answer, and you can maybe just stick it on your desk. But make sure you do not have anything, you know, that you're reading, because it does sound rehearsed and it just doesn't sound natural.
Yeah. Good.
Okay. This is a good one for right, I think.
When schools ask if you've done a pre-health program with them, how do they use that information in the admissions decision? As an example, UTSW has several options, and STARS and SURF are among them. Yeah, so so the question basically is, if a med school has some sort of programmatic activities for pre-med students, and you go to their campus during your college experience and you do the thing, maybe it's a research experience or maybe it's whatever it might be, and then they ask. I think what they're generally, my sense is that what they're generally looking at is in the secondary application, or in the that you do, they're generally wanting to track things. It's maybe not as much relevant to the admissions decision, but what they're trying to do is they're trying to track, is the program that we have affecting people, in other words, in terms of how likely they may be to get into medical school or whatever. It's statistically tracking these programs. So it's not going to really have, at least from my perspective now, Dina and Carlos, you guys may have a different experience with that, but that's my sense. You guys have any input on that?
I mean, I'm assuming that Arn is saying, like, if school has a pre-health program, like a summer program or some kind of program that they offer,
Yeah.
right, to
Right.
pre-meds, like,
Right.
is your application looked at differently? And it all depends on what the school does. Like, is your application, flagged to get looked at differently? Is there a question on the application that says, have you been part of one of our pre-health programs? If it's something for like underrepresented students or first generation students that's like funded by the university, I think that's different. If it's a program that you pay for, like I'm going back to like my undergrad admission days, like there's so many students who do those pre-college programs and they pay for it, like $3,000 to go to in the summer, and they think it's going to make a difference. And at the end of the day, you can't give preference to somebody who can afford to do something over someone who can't. right? So you do those programs for your own benefit and your own exposure, but for the most part, it's not going to make or break an admissions decision. So I think it just depends on the school.
Yeah. Okay.
This is an interesting question. This is part 1.
Oh, Emperor Palpatine. I've always wanted to meet you. If I do competitive shooting sport at a high school level and is a sport
High
hobby,
level.
I spend a large, high level, a large amount of time practicing. Should I include it in my application, or would this be seen as negative? I'm a Texas resident. Oh, okay. Thanks for the little add-on. So that's interesting. So, I think that. So my first reaction to this is no, it would not be seen as negative. I mean, it's a hobby, it's a sport, it's whatever, and so I don't see that this would be problematic at all. Now, if this is all you do and you talk about it constantly throughout your application, that might be a little creepy. But if you're just saying this is a hobby that I have and I am in a shooting club and I am a competitive shooter like we've seen in the Olympics in the summer, then yeah, I don't think this is a problem at all. I mean, what do y'all think?
Yeah, I don't think it's a problem. I think the only thing that I would caution is when entering this experience is entering it and talking about the activity that all of this was done during high school. Like, make sure that you do talk about the evolution of how you started competitively in high school and it transitioned to a sport and a hobby. Because when you're talking about things during high school, it seems so far removed from what you're doing now. And committees might look at that as like, that was in high school, we're not even going to consider that. Or it's so far from who you are today that committees might be like, we don't know why this individual included it. So just make sure you talk about it from a sport hobby. You can introduce that you began this journey in high school, but then expand on that as the hobby, how that transformed now into a hobby.
Good.
Okay. We have a 2-part question here from Mimi, and the first part is really nice. Hi all, super non-trad here. Thanks to y'all's advice throughout the year, received 6 interview invites. I don't know how to do the clapping sound. Dr. Gray usually does. With low stats, extremely grateful for you all. Congrats, Mimi. That is amazing. And the second part of her question is this. How to answer why should we accept you in an interview?
Yeah. What do you think, Dina? What would you say?
I mean, you don't want to come off too too confident or cocky, I guess. I think just highlighting what makes you different and the impact you hope to make in medicine and the drive that you have to be there. I also would add a little humility to it and be a little humble and probably be like, I'm sure that everyone that you're interviewing has what it takes to get accepted, and it's a very competitive pool, and everyone would make an amazing physician. But here's why I'm a good fit for your program, and here's what I think I'll end up making in terms of an impact in medicine and what I can bring to the program. I think it's more of an answer of what can you bring to that specific program, and are you a good fit?
Mm-hmm.
What
Yeah.
do you think?
Yeah. Carlos, what are your thoughts?
And I think Dina said it correctly. It's a fine balance of sort of promoting yourself and, I would say, advocating for why you want to be in the program, but also being very humble about the opportunity of being a part of the interview process and being humble at the possibility of being admitted into the program. So it's that fine balance, not coming off too cocky, not coming off too lax to say like, well, I have 6 other interviews, so if I get accepted here, great. If not, I have 5 that I'm banking on. You have to be very thoughtful about that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I often have students who go down the road of comparing themselves to other applicants. I had one the other day who basically said, I know, I think I'm unique because I think I and did this and that and this and that, and because I know that there's a lot of other people in the applicant pool, but my passion is, so much better. And I mean, you know, you don't number one, you don't know the other people in the applicant pool, so you don't know if you compare well or not. So that's the first thing that strikes me. And the second thing is to say, focus on you and not comparing yourself to other people. What are you bringing to the table? And articulate it as the value that I would bring to the class. And I really think you want to focus on two different groups of people in how you're going to affect those two groups of people. The first group of people are your peers. How are you going to be in terms of the mix of the class, and how are you going to add to the mix of the class through the fact that you're there? Um, are you a good collaborator? Have you shown good team involvement and good team abilities and stuff? Are you a leader? Do you have a perspective that might bring diversity to through experiences that you've had or who you are in particular? So the first group is peers. The second group I would say to concentrate on are patients. You get involved in clinical medicine very early in American medical education these days. In the first year of medical school, you're in the clinics and you're in the hospitals, you're doing stuff. And medical schools want to know that the wheels aren't going to fall off when you get into the clinics, and that you're going to be able to relate to patients, and that you're going to be able to carry on conversations, and all the things that you're hoping to do in this interview. And so what you want to say is that I'm going to be, you want to help the medical school understand that when you are dealing with patients, you're going to shine. You're going to make the school look good in terms of how you're going to be responding to patients and stuff like that. So, so I think if you'll mention something about how you're going to fit together with your peers and how you're going to fit together with the patients, those are two very probably some of the most important people groups that you're going to interact with in medical school are those two groups of people. So think about that in terms of how you might want to structure your comments.
Very good. That was a great answer. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Thank you, Mimi.
Yeah.
Okay. We have during COVID-19, I took Bio 1A as pass, non-pass, so no letter grade, which was advised by my college, which a lot of colleges did, right, during the pandemic. It's a lot more virtual. Should I retake it at a community college for a letter grade? I think it depends on the policy of the school. And that's where MSAR is really helpful, like looking up to see there might be schools that don't accept non-letter grade courses. So just make sure. And if you have specific schools in mind, you can even email admissions and just say, what would you prefer? And they'll answer you usually. I don't know.
But I'm not sure about taking it at a community college. That
the community college piece. Yeah, that concerns me. Yeah, if you're going to retake
I think if you're going to retake it, don't do it at a community college. Do it at a university or a four-year school. I think that there's too many potential questions that might come up with that.
What? What kind of questions?
Well, I mean, I think, the question, it might be something like, well, we don't know what I'm assuming you passed Bio 1A. So, the pass, and then if you go to the community college, you make an A, well, is that we don't know what the pass means, and now aren't quite sure what the A means at a community college. Now, all of this is within the context of saying, if you have a 3.89 GPA, then none of this is going to really matter that much. It's going to be you're a great student. You passed this class. It was during COVID. I agree with Dina that you're going to have to check with schools and kind of see what their response to that is. But my guess is that most schools are going to say, if during the pandemic, we get it, you're not going to have to retake it or anything like that. But if a particular school did say, now having said that, if your GPA is 3.2, then that's a whole different ball game. Or or a 3.0 or a 2.8, that's a whole different ball game than a pass. And then you go to a community college and make an A. Well, I still am very confused about who you are academically. So I think a lot of this depends on context of who you are this day soon. And I hopefully that helps a little bit. I saw you kind of nod your head, Carlos. Did that resonate with you?
Yeah, it does. And I think it's also like one course. If it was like the one course you took as a pass, no pass, right? I think it'd be okay because you have other areas, but it also is looking at your application in its entirety. If it was all pass, no pass, then I think we would be having a very different conversation. But if it's one course, contact the schools. I feel like you'll be okay because you've demonstrated in other areas, but without looking at your entire application, it's very hard to say.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a two-part question here from Jada. What range is considered to be an unacceptable MCAT score for both MD and DO programs? Even with high stats, volunteer, shadowing, and clinical hours, the only thing lacking is the MCAT score. That depends. It depends.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, it depends on the school, and I do think that DO programs have a lower threshold typically than MD programs do. And that's not to say they're accepting unqualified applicants. It just means they're looking at different things, and they're looking at different, the whole picture of everything, and making determinations about who they're going to accept. But yeah, I think there's too much variation here to really answer this question very well.
Yeah.
I will say, don't aim low.
Yeah.
Don't. I almost sometimes think that this question's asked to be like, okay, I am going to aim to the lowest possible score, and that score's going to get me in. And again, it's not a straightforward without looking at your entire application. But don't aim low, aim high, and don't aim for the average that the school has admitted in the past. I mean, that's just a data point to help and guide you, give you an understanding of the composition of the class. But if you're concerned with the MCAT, I would seek assistance specifically as to why your MCAT maybe is preventing you from either applying, or if you receive denials. There's more to that story.
Some schools also have a cutoff. Now, if you look on MSAR or on each individual site, they might say like, our cutoff is like 498. We don't look at applications, below that. Some schools have cutoffs for out-of-state students. So I think UNC Chapel Hill is one example. Interestingly enough, it's not on MSAR. You have to click on the link to go to their page, and you'll see, like, I think it's a 514 for out-of-state. Texas system, the same thing, right? Dr. Wright? So you have to do your research.
Yeah, and I would say in terms of, and this varies as well, as Dina just said, but, I think in general, if you're below a 500 for either DO or MD schools, that's going to be a tough go. It doesn't mean people don't get in with below a 500. Sometimes they do, but it's a very small number. And so I would say, Jada, if you're looking for some number as a floor, I'd say below 500 is going to be, over 500 is where you want to shoot. Now, obviously 510 is going to put you in much better position. But so, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Jada. We have Angel. Hello. After completing associates at a community college but not getting a great GPA at a four-year college, would it be okay to do a do-it-yourself post-bacc at a community college? For financial aid reasons, I'm looking at community college post-bacc or MA, maybe master's.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would guess. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
I don't think so, Angel. Sorry. That would be, I mean, basically what you're looking at, Angel, is the way that I would look at it as an admissions officer is I would say a community college, a non-competitive environment. It's not to say there aren't great students at community college. I'm not saying that community college is, not a great place to start or whatever. Don't hear I'm, really saying that. But what I want to say is that at a relatively non-competitive institution, in other words, you can walk in the door and go to community college. There's no admission standards. It's an open access institution. You did great, but then you go to a four-year institution where you're, number one, dealing with upper level courses now, and you're also dealing with a competitive environment, and you didn't do as well. To then shift back to, that's not getting you anywhere. That's not getting you anywhere. So, Carlos, do you agree with that?
Yeah, it sort of looks as like they compare the environments that you're in, and it sort of demonstrates like in this different environment you didn't do so well. So you're going back to where you did great, and it looks very odd as to why that was done. And I understand that it's just for financial aid reasons. I would say take a step back, maybe take a little bit more of a break to really think about the consequence of doing what you want to do if you are going to pursue the DIY post-bacc at a community college, or even take some time to maybe seek out scholarships to be able to do a true post-bacc at a four-year institution or a master's program. Yeah, it's a tough situation, but
yeah.
Right. We have another one from Anna P. How does it reflect if I switch schools halfway through undergrad to med schools at the time of application? I mean, people transfer all the time.
Yeah.
For different reasons. It's more about your performance, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if there was an extenuating circumstance or like a life event or a particular reason that you had to switch, that's a great, that's something you're able to write about in the other impactful essay section of MCATs, just discussing like maybe how your education was jolted or something that impacted you. But I mean, there's plenty of people applying to med school who get accepted to med school who've transferred. There's,
lots of them.
Yes.
Yeah, some people transfer multiple times.
That's true.
I was in that boat.
Things happen, right?
Yep, that's right. Things happen.
Okay. We need a little more questions. So you can ask questions about anything that you would like. Let's see. Here's one from Kat. How closely do schools look at individual classes taken and individual MCAT sections? Or is it more about overall GPA and MCAT? Immediately think of cars here.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I do think that schools look closer than just the overall stuff. Now they're looking at trends. They're looking at, if you had a really bad semester one semester, they may want to know what happened that semester. And, and you may think, well, okay, I had this terrible, my grandmother got sick and I had to go home to, help care for her or whatever. I got mono and, had a terrible semester because I was sick or whatever. And that's relevant. The med schools want to know about that kind of stuff. They also want to know. I know in my experience, I had one admissions committee that was very interested in organic chemistry, how you did in organic chemistry. And they would look specifically at OChem as an indicator. If you struggled in OChem, they were very concerned about that. Dina, you mentioned cars. Yeah, I mean, if car score is too low, then that's a red flag, I think, for some schools, maybe all
Or
schools.
some schools have a cutoff too.
Mm-hmm,
You have individual subsections.
Subscores. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and I remember seeing this would not happen very often, but occasionally we'd have an applicant who would have maybe a mediocre science GPA and a great non-science GPA, and they had like several minors in non-science fields and stuff. And all of a sudden, the question becomes, you're doing great in non-science classes, you're doing great in your philosophy major or whatever. Why do you want, what's that all about? What's happening with that? If you're struggling in science, but you're doing great in humanities, then there's questions that come up about that kind of stuff. So anyway,
because med school will be a challenge, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the goal is to accept students will perform well and matriculate, and as Carlos knows, be able to get into like competitive residency programs.
Right. That's right.
Okay. Thank you, Kat.
And I was going to mention there was an interesting article. Let me see where this article was from that I read the other day that I wanted to mention to everyone. It was about residency. Carlos, I was wondering if you maybe even saw this. It was from a news service called The Hill, and it was an article written by two Congress people, one Republican and one Democrat, and it was all about osteopathic residencies and about there being a more level playing field, and that there's residency directors who won't even look at a DO, and so all of a sudden here's these two, and they're proposing legislation to require that the playing field be leveled for DO and MD applicants in terms of access to residency programs. And I thought it was a very interesting article and a very interesting proposal from these two Congress people that they might want to do this. And so I thought it was just fascinating. I don't know. Had you seen that, Carlos?
I had not, but I mean, being on the other side, there's always that question of like, our DO graduates, I would say, in parity with MD graduates. And we know that it is, and they are, it's just differences in the training that they go through. I think in the last, I don't remember when it happened, when the DO program sort of became part of just the whole residency process. It was not too long ago that they all sort of merged together for one residency process for both DO and MD. It'll be fascinating. It'll be interesting to see. I will say that across the country, there is not enough residency positions for all of the applicants. And I will also say that allopathic schools, MD schools, outnumber DO schools. And so I think there's always going to be skewed numbers in terms of how many MD graduates compared to DO graduates there is across the country. But I would be interested to see what this policy does and how does it force residency programs.
Right.
When even medical schools don't even know how a lot of the residency programs select residents, right? I think there's some understanding similar to the admission side. On the residency side, it's very secretive. So I don't know if this will expose or make programs expose a lot of their practices, especially for those competitive specialties.
Yep. Yep.
And ironically, we have a residency question.
Oh, good.
It's a two-part question from Stephen. I'm an M4, so in med school, M4, but taking personal leave for mental health reasons. So I won't graduate this upcoming May, and I'll have to wait until next match cycle, so the next residency match cycle. How would this affect my residency application? And what would your advice be to keep in touch with medicine during the interim until I resume my clinicals?
Yeah. Programs are required to notate in your medical student performance evaluation any breaks that you take from your program. And depending on how your school classifies a personal leave as just an LOA, it's just, and how they craft their MSPEs, they would enter just that the student took a leave from this date to this date. It shouldn't really affect you because it's not like you're a reapplicant, you're just delaying graduation and delaying entering the process. So you're looked at as a brand new applicant in that cycle. You'll have an opportunity to ask. You'll have an opportunity to tell programs if you are asked, why is it that it took longer for you to graduate? And you can explain that it was a personal leave. If it's truly a personal leave, some schools get very creative with leaves, may put you on a research year because it's a little bit decompressed. You're doing research on your own. So it just depends on the school, where you're going to school, and how they're classifying that leave. I think to keep engaged, again, it depends, right? If you're really taking a personal leave for mental health reasons, you have to balance that out with, I'm telling my program I want to leave because I'm for mental health reasons, but then I want to continue to engage in the same type of activities that sort of putting you in that position. And so you really have to balance that out, and really think through how you can remain engaged without appearing as if like you wanted to detach from the program but still remain engaged with the program, if that makes any sense. So it's not too difficult. You're not being looked at as again, reapplicant into residency and failing through the match process. You'll really have an opportunity to go in fresh, and you'll have an opportunity, if asked, to explain the personal leave that you took. And you can be as vague, or you can be as very detailed with the program. But again, I would caution disclosing a lot of detail to programs because sometimes, unfortunately, they can use that against you. They won't tell you that outright, but we've seen that happen in some programs.
Good. Hopefully that's
Great
good for you,
answer.
Stephen. Yeah, thank you, Carlos.
Yeah.
That's good.
Okay, a few more questions here. I'm a nurse, Sarah. I'm a nurse with a traditional BSN from a competitive university, trying to complete science prereqs. Could I start my do-it-yourself post-bacc community college and then transfer to a university?
I think that'll vary on the program, right? Like, will the program let you?
Yeah.
I don't think it's an easy.
And will some med schools don't want community college courses, so you just have to make sure.
Yeah, and again, I think too, Sarah, it really depends, in my view, on how you did in your BSN. If you were a top-notch student, then starting your post-bacc at community college and then transferring to university, if everything's consistent, if you're a consistently good student in the BSN and at the community college and at the university, then there's no questions. There's fewer questions that are going to come up because everything's consistent. But if in your BSN, if you were sort of middle range or lower student in terms of your academic performance, then I would say stay away from the community college.
Okay. Let's see here. We have Arvin D. What's the best way for an international student? Oh, I get this question a lot. To get clinical experience. I can't get a clinical job due to my visa restrictions, and it seems like hospice volunteering might be the best option. So assuming that they are talking about getting clinical experience in the United States, right?
Yeah.
It's tough.
Yeah. Volunteering. That's the only thing you can do.
Yeah, clinical volunteering.
Volunteer at a hospital and hospice, nursing homes, you know.
Yeah. And clinical and shadowing has even become more difficult now for all students. It's after, I think, COVID, of course, restrictions in place, but then after that, I think some facilities, hospitals, and doctors' offices didn't go back, and they're still very cautious of letting individuals in. So keep looking.
Yeah. Keep looking. And then,
but I would say the volunteer work's your only option for sure.
Yeah. And if you do go back to, if you travel back to your country, during summers or breaks or anything, even just getting clinical experience in that country, so at least you have some exposure to patients, even though it's not the United States. But I think a combination of that and volunteering is better than no experience with patients.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. I think we can do one more question, and then I'd like to just mention, for those of you who have interviews right now, the fall and going into early winter is popular. We do mock interviews, so highly suggest that. It's one thing to practice with friends and family, one thing to practice with people you work with. It's another thing to practice with one of us, who can really try to hone in on improving your interview skills. So.
Yeah.
Okay. I think this might be our last question. From Burley. How do medical schools look at a student who has taken classes at 2 other schools, aside from their main university? Is this a red flag? Got a lot of questions today about taking classes at other schools, right?
Well, I think, some undergraduate institutions have restrictions on how many classes you can take elsewhere and it apply to your degree. So you need to check with your institution to make sure that you're not going to, mess yourself up in that way. But, my experience, just from my perspective, is that I don't know that our admissions committees really cared that much. I mean, again, it's all about consistency. If you're performing consistently in hard classes in a great way, then where you take the classes is less relevant. But if you're constantly seem to be switching around, then that can raise, a little bit of a red flag. But I don't know. What do y'all think?
Yeah. I would caution, and then because I've seen this before, where I failed my biology class, and then retaking my biology class at my university, I took it, at a community college, and I passed it, and I transferred it back. And I mean, again, it goes back to that community college for your institution. I would say, I wouldn't want to say this word because I don't believe in it, but like the prestige that comes with the 4-year, or the rigor that comes with the 4-year institution versus the community college can be seen upon as different. So I would just be very cautious in doing that. If you're going from 4-year university to 4-year university for reasons I think that we've all mentioned, of like you've transferred or you moved around, I think it's fine. It's just not jumping to a less rigorous place to take a course and then transfer it back in. Because you may get asked and you might have to explain why that was done.
There are a lot of students too who did dual enrollment. I have a lot of experience with this, who've done dual enrollment classes in high school. And those grades follow you forever. So you have to technically, if you earned a grade through a university, which dual enrollment at the high school level is, you have to report those grades on your MCAS. And, usually those are one or two other schools. So that's very common to see on applications, and admissions understands that, those are dual enrollment and part of a high school curriculum. But for any high school kids watching, make sure that you do well in those dual enrollment classes because they matter.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
I just I wanted to make mention, I put on the ticker that if you want to sign up for example, mock interviews with any of our advisors, then you can use the code PMOH for pre-med office hours to save money on signing up for those sessions. So just keep that in mind if you're interested in doing mock interviews, or if you want to meet with one of our advisors to just talk about your journey and problems that you're having or whatever, get our advice, then check out the packages available and stuff at medicalschoolheadquarters.net.
Very good. Well, thank you for all your questions today.
Yeah,
that was a great.
It was awesome.
Great
Any last
hour.
words for these nervous students, Carlos?
Just be patient.
Yeah.
Patience.
Dina, what do you think?
Just be patient, especially if you didn't submit your secondaries until August, like you likely aren't even read yet. Because you're in a pile of thousands and thousands. So just sit tight, just hang tight, be patient.
That's right.
Let the process unfold.
That's right. Yeah, you did your thing. Now you got to let the med schools do their thing. So
exactly.
Be patient. I agree. Be patient. And we all recognize, the three of us here, we all recognize, for all of you that are listening right now, that's not an easy task. We get it. We understand that this is a challenge, and we're sympathetic, and we we're sending our vibes your way to help out in that way. So just keep up the good fight. All right.
Bye everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.